Good morning. Happy Monday, everybody. Welcome to the State of MedTech. And we have a fantastic episode and a live stream today. Thank you all for joining. Today's episode is a very interesting one. We have a lot of academic clinicians who follow us, and many of you have either started a research program or thinking about doing it. Maybe you're a fellow and you're looking to go to a new program and establish yourself. So for those reasons, I decided I wanted to do a CME webinar. So of course, thanks to our partners over at CMify, this live stream and the recording, depending on when you're watching it, is eligible for you to unlock a clinical education credit. And so all you got to do is watch this webinar. And then once you're done with it, click the link in the show notes below. We'll also email this out to all registrants. Spend 30 seconds, write a quick little reflection about what you learned. And just like that, you'll be able to unlock an AMA PRA Category 1 credit. And the best part is it's free. That's right. You don't have to pay a single penny for it. The State of MedTech, we believe in doing our best to quote unquote democratize education. And so what we want to do for clinicians is our way of saying thank you is to help support you, whether you're a fellow or a research chair or anything else. And so you'll be getting those credits for free. So with that being said, what's today's topic? Well, today's topic is an interesting one, and we call it How to Transform an Academic Medical Department into a Research Powerhouse. Our guest today is a good friend of mine who I met about, I think, 3 or 4 years ago to the date through the powers of LinkedIn, and that's Dr. Ashish Khanna. Let me tell you a little bit about him. And of course, because the show is a fantastic show, but I don't have a producer, I have to do all this myself. Let me bring it up here. So Dr. Ashish Khanna is the Associate Professor and Vice Chair of Research and the Director of Perioperative Outcomes and Informatics Collaborative, POIC, Department of Anesthesiology, and Section on Critical Care Medicine at the Wake Forest School of Medicine. So that aside, why am I having Dr. Ashish Khanna on? The reason why is because Dr. Ashish Khanna, within a very short amount of time, specifically about 3 years, was able to go to Wake Forest University and through his own clinical strategies, transform it into a research and publication powerhouse. So we want to bring him on to share how he did this and educate other academic clinicians just like you. But of course, we can't start the show without the traditional comment in the chat, what city you're joining in from. We like to give a shout out. So whatever city you're joining in from, comment in the chat. We'll bring you up and give you a shout out. And then with that being said, let me bring on our guests. All right. Fantastic. Hey, everybody. Great to see you all. All right. Dr. Khanna, can you hear us?
Yes, sir.
Fantastic. Hey, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us today.
Likewise, thank you for having me.
Fantastic. It looks like we got some people who are commenting. So Dr. Khateeb from San Diego. Hey, Dr. Khateeb, thanks for joining. So Dr. Khanna, what's important about this topic? What are the main things we're going to learn today? I know you have some slides for us, but before we get into that, give us a little overview as to what you're going to walk us through.
Well, Omar, I think that what I'm going to walk you all through is is the journey and the understanding of the mission and vision and future perspectives, and hopefully I want the audiences to really take home a few important things. First of all, let me start by saying that there is great joy in building your own product. Let me also start by saying that it's never easy. But the third and most important point is that if you have a framework and if you have a well thought out plan, then it does ultimately work out. And when it starts working out, then that should inspire you to keep going and to spread that knowledge, right? So 3 years ago, I was in a spot where I thought, well, this is going to be really, really difficult. Today, we are at a different trajectory altogether, and I want to do my bit and spread that knowledge and so-called wisdom, and hope that there's people listening who'll take away some good points from this. I also will say very quickly, Omar, that none of this could have happened without collaborators, sponsors, colleagues, and so on and so forth. And collaborators, sponsors, and colleagues from the academic world and from industry. So I do want industry partners here to take home a very simple message that working with clinician scientists is essential, but it's essential to co-develop and understand each other's needs. And if we can do that, then we can truly help catalyze the next era of innovation and discovery that's so important in medicine.
Absolutely, and really well put. And when I know we did a podcast early, which will be released hopefully in a couple weeks, but you put it very, very well, which is how do we build science together, right, between academic departments and researchers and industry. So with that being said, Dr. Khanna, let me hop off the feed for a second, and I'll let you take over and present. Let me actually add your screen to the feed, and you can get into your presentation.
Sure. Let's see if I can do this.
We'll give a little shout out. Dr. Kraunek coming in from Concepcion, Chile. We got people from Chile. Hey, welcome. And for those who are watching, feel free to leave some comments. We'll do some live questions and answers shortly. So feel free to comment. But in the meantime, let me hand it over to Dr. Khanna.
All right, Omar, can you see this?
Yes, I can see that.
Okay, great. So again, I didn't have any specific slides set out for this. I wanted this to be more conversational, and the opportunity to sort of talk to everyone and talk to you and really keep it open ended. However, I do want to go back and sort of describe the journey and describe the mission and vision, as I just said. So like my title slide here suggests, the journey was making a collaborative clinical research system work. And I say collaborative with a lot of emphasis on collaborative because clinical research is collaborative just by the nature of being clinical. When you are a clinician, you never work in isolation. Whether it's being an anesthesiologist, surgeon, a internal medicine physician, a pediatrician, infectious disease doctor, whoever you are, you will always be working in close collaboration with other specialties. So, the essence of designing a clinical research system is to base it on collaboration. And collaboration these days is really important as we are expanding the scope of clinical research to include not just one department, but more than one institution, several institutions, and sometimes several institutions spread across the world. So the mission and vision here was to set up something called the Perioperative Outcomes and Informatics Collaborative, which in our world would be a common playground for anesthesiologists, surgeons, internal medicine doctors, critical care physicians, who all of them crisscross the same space in the operating room, the preoperative area, the postoperative area, the intensive care unit, and the general hospital floor, taking care of a patient who is sort of going through and completing his or her course of time in a hospital. So
Dr.
our
Khanna,
yes.
sorry to interrupt. I just want to make sure we're still on the title slide, right?
Yes. Sorry,
Okay.
I'm
Okay.
taking.
I just want to. No. It's okay. No. You're good. We had this
I
happen
know.
the other day, so I want to make sure. Okay, keep going. You're good.
All right. So, Omar and everyone, again, to give perspective, the postoperative period is a really important cause of concern, right? And we all take great care of patients in the operating room. So again, for perspective, mortality within the operating room is so low that it's hard to quantify it. Gone are those days where people would go into surgery and not make it out alive. In fact, credit to um, the way we practice surgery and anesthesia and how advanced automation has become in the operating room. Even though we're operating on older, frailer, and sicker patients, we have been able to keep intraoperative mortality down to the fractions of decimal points. However, the same patients in the first 30 days out of surgery do not then achieve a similar safe trajectory of recovery. So on this slide, you can see postoperative deaths, if taken as a disease entity in and of itself, is the third most common cause of mortality. If you do a calculation here, it's about 4,000 deaths per year per thousand. So it's 4 million deaths annually happen in the first 30 days after surgery. And most of these deaths happen when patients are still recovering under our direct care in major hospital systems, not just in the developing world, but also in the developed world. In fact, this data published in the Lancet comes from both low, middle, and high income countries. So, huge issue there, right? So, lots and lots of advances in the intraoperative period. The postoperative period, we still need to do more work to make care safer. And that was the vision, again, behind this perioperative collaborative, was that there's a huge area of clinical need where patients are suffering harm, which means there's a huge area for research, quality, innovation, R&D, and you name it, that would improve outcomes for patients in the postoperative period. So as my slide here highlights, we wanted to get departments of anesthesiology, perioperative services, surgical quality, gerontology, all medical services, surgical critical care, all together, focus on outcomes such as myocardial injury, acute kidney injury, perioperative quality outcomes, perioperative cognitive dysfunction, frailty, and specifically the elderly. We wanted to focus here. And then the rest of the spokes here would be the departments of public health sciences, health services research, clinical and translational sciences, biostatistics, nursing research informatics, healthcare innovation, and biomedical informatics. And all of these, in collaboration with the clinical sciences, would become a center for advanced analytics in perioperative outcomes. We have now named it the Perioperative Outcomes and Informatics Collaborative. That was the sort of the birth of the idea, and really, again, lots of language and sentences on the slide, but this is essentially what I just said. A three-pronged mission here to develop a research, organizational, administrative, data analytics, and informatics core that would allow us to become a large perioperative and critical care outcomes network, both within and outside our institution, in fact, become the headquarter of doing all of these clinical trials. Secondly, to get lots and lots of perioperative data and answer lots and lots of research outcomes, informatics, and quality questions using novel analytic methodologies. And number three, and probably the most important, would be to encourage junior investigators, early career investigators, to come to us and we help them not just answer questions, but also help them with funding to develop new questions and ideas. So very quickly, how we're set up. We're based out of the Department of Anesthesiology here under my direct leadership. I'm vice chair for research for the Department of Anesthesiology at the Wake Forest School of Medicine. And we have several layers of our research team. Our backbone is our research nurses, and they really drive all of our research. We have five full-time research nurses now. We one senior research nurse manager and four other research nurses. And then there's lots and lots of different terminology here. So if I go over that really quickly, clinical research technicians are, again, they they work in close alignment with everyone else. So they are gap year students, they are pre-medical students who want to spend 1 to 2 years before they go to medical school, or sometimes to PA school, or nurse, or want to become nurse practitioners with us doing full-time research. These are paid positions. We interview for them. Like currently we're doing interviews for it. We got 50 applications for about 5 positions, so we'll do a staged interview, looking at their overall CVs and what they have to offer us. So they stay with us for a year or 2 years. And then we've got the clinical research associates. These are senior medical students, or sometimes even folks who've just finished medical school, who want to spend a year or 2 years doing full-time research. We again employ them, and they work with us sort of as a more senior position. Then we've got clinical research coordinators. They are also beyond medical school, and sometimes full-time clinical research coordinators as a full-time profession, and not just as a bridge to get to residency. We've got international research scholars that visit us from various countries. I had one from Sweden last year. This year I have one from South Korea, and then there'll be more to follow. These are full-time anesthesiologists or critical care doctors in their own countries, and they come with some research background, and they really work very closely with me on projects that uh, where they align with me directly. And then finally, we have our research administrative personnel, and they're certainly extremely important because they help to keep our paperwork straight and help to make sure that the contracts are signed as they should be signed, and everything else should be aligned. And then we generate lots and lots of data. So we have data analysts and statisticians that sort of make up the team. This has been the progress of our team going back to 2016 here, and moving forward to current times. And again, I'm not going to spend a lot of detail here, but we've grown in a almost linear fashion, and now we have about 25 full-time employed research personnel in this department, making it one of the largest full-time employed research personnel anesthesia departments in the country. And certainly very proud of these folks. And this is what they've done in terms of the number of grants we're getting awarded per year as the Department of Anesthesiology. Again, without going into too much detail, those numbers have gone up again near exponentially, where we're doing upwards of 35 to 40 clinical trials at any one given time in this department. So this is how we do our research. Again, a principal investigator would be someone like me or one of my colleagues who has a trial that they're doing. Like I said, we're supported by administrative staff. So the Office of Sponsored Research Programs is OSRP. They have the research administrators on the back end. And then we also have grant administrators and post-award people at the other end who take care of the contractual paperwork. And then for our individual studies, so we have study A, we'll have a research nurse who sort of leads study A in close collaboration with the PI. And within that cohort, there will be a clinical research technician, the pre-medical student I talked to you about, and or a clinical research associate or a coordinator, depending on how complicated or involved the study is. So like this, we have multiple mini cohorts and clusters of ongoing studies where there will be layers of hierarchical team members ultimately reporting back to the PI. So we can keep multiple trials ongoing and enrolling all the time in cohesion, 365 days a year, essentially 365 days a year. This is this large group. I'm really proud of them and how they've grown over the years. And certainly each one of these team members deserves to be congratulated for what we've achieved. This is how we look like on our website, and I've enclosed a link here. I'm happy to send the live link out. We're open for external collaborators, so this is not something that is just limited to Wake Forest or Atrium Health, but it's actually open to the rest of the research world, the world of industry, the world of innovation, the world of product development, where I want to hear from you and collaborate with you. So please do come along, and there's a easy entry eligibility form that you can fill and become a part of this. We're also offering research funding internally for now within our CTSI mechanism at Wake Forest. So if there is a idea that is important to the research world in the perioperative outcome space, then we supplement the research award that's offered by the Clinical Translational Science Institute at Wake Forest. And uh, as I come to the end of the very quick sort of talk, I do want to say one of the biggest visions here is to become one of the most productive clinical research trial sites in the nation. And now, because we're part of the Atrium Health infrastructure, we're the fifth largest health system in the nation. We do have a lot of interest from potential sponsors as we build out programs like this, because there's the ability to enroll really quickly and across multiple hospitals across the entire enterprise. So these are sort of my mantras for people who want to build something like this. Again, this is not be all end all. This would be just some starting points for discussion. Number one is clinical trials or research is a 24/7 job. So please don't do it as a hobby. Do it as a full-time job. It is a 365 days a year job, including people who will be at research leadership positions. Don't take it lightly. Do it well, and never do it as a side job. Do it as our primary job if you really want to do well with the job itself. You always need a system and an infrastructure. So be organized to start, because without organization you will not do well in studies. And understand that all research is subject to audit. These are real patients, real data, and sometimes data that goes to the FDA, where they base your results to say allow a product to come to market or allow a drug to go through a phase 3 trial and be available. So if your data is not collected properly, then you are being irresponsible, and you're obviously will be in big trouble. So understand that all research is subject to audit. So that's why system and infrastructure is really, really important. And I've just highlighted things here. Have a senior research nurse, have an administrator, have a manager, have a regulatory person in your ranks. Build a structure and build bench strength. And by bench strength, I really mean, in the world of research, that means that never be in a situation where you say, oh, when I have the trial start is when I will enroll a research nurse to be my person for this trial. No, you have to have a bench strength always ready to go, not just to do research from Monday to Thursday, but to do research including enrollment on Fridays, so you can follow patients over the weekend, because clinical research questions do arise on holidays and weekends as well. So you need a multi-pronged team that's going to work across all shifts, all times. Finally, synergize and collaborate with local investigators and partners. Collaborative world of research, both within and outside. Industry partners, federal funding, local partners, all are really important. And then, obviously, most importantly, reevaluate yourself very, very frequently and at all times. And in fact, ask for reevaluations from people who are outside your system, because their feedback is really important. And I will stop here, Omar. This is just sort of something to get us going. I'll come back to the main screen now.
Perfect, fantastic, and a great presentation. So let me pull up the main thing. So for everybody, we're going to do a live Q&A now. So go ahead and comment with your question. Dr. Khanna, I want to kick us off. I love these talks because it kind of gives you an idea of parts of the clinical world that people aren't exposed to. And so a lot of what you described is similar to like building a very high output professional sports team. So you mentioned bench strength. Please talk about that, because I think the compounding effects of that is so important long term to be able to be a powerhouse. Can you talk more about bench strength?
Yeah, I love the word bench strength, right? And I knew that you would bring sports in here. So yeah, bench strength in research is important. A lot of times people will start and say, well, I will only have one research nurse on my team because I'm just doing one trial right now. So that research nurse will do that, and I have no one else because, well, it's expensive. I don't have the resources to devote to this. And then they sort of work on this very tight model where, as long as that research nurse is okay, is sort of firing on all cylinders with the PI, then everything's working fine. But then what happens when you have five other ideas brewing in the background? And and then what happens if that one person, either you have to take time away or that research nurse, life happens, has to go away for a little bit. Then your research starts suffering. The other five ideas also start suffering. And then you go through these periods of highs and lows where, oh, there'll be a few months where you're doing a great job, you're recruiting, you're putting your data in, everything looks really good. And then you'll go through these periods where people wonder what happened to this trial site. You're just not performing. And I think that's where bench strength comes in. Always have more than necessary uh, people. When I say more than necessary, I mean always have plan B, plan C, and plan D in this case, because things happen. Clinical research trials, just by the nature of what they are, they take time to finish. They take a year, sometimes multiple years to finish. So you have to allow for multiple layers of folks in your team. And also, Omar, very quickly, I said it's a 24/7 job. A lot of teams will not enroll on Fridays because they feel that, oh, and then we'll have to follow patients on Saturdays, Sundays. Believe it or not, we have a full year of a call schedule on our team, on our research team now. So, like the doctors who come into work on Saturdays and Sundays based on a call, our research team also takes call on Saturday and Sunday. So, if we have patients in the hospital that we're following, someone will come in and finish the job. And I think that is really, really necessary. That's where bench strength really helps.
It makes so much sense. Is there a scenario where a researcher may not be able to have the bench strength that they want? Like, is it like maybe perhaps funding related or something? Or is this something that, you can find a way to build it?
You can find a way to build it. And I guess I speak for myself here. I think you have to lead from the front and prioritize it. I think a lot of times it's sort of a forgotten priority. The other part is, when I say lead from the front, I guess your availability to really inspire your team and say, um, I will do it. I'm always available. And I just speak for
Mm.
myself. And again, that's not entirely the best answer for for your
No, but that's a
family,
good answer though.
if you're getting paged all the time, or if you're getting called all the time. But I do make it a point that if there's something going on with my trials, that I am available 24/7, including the fact that when I'm traveling internationally, I keep myself available. I might be in a totally different time zone, but I tell them, call me anytime and I will do whatever it takes to make sure that things are flowing properly. Right. And I guess the point I'm trying to make, Omar, is not always can you have um, bench strength. Sometimes you're tight on funding, but then you have to make yourself available. You cannot let the research suffer, because it's a really poor answer is, oh, I was away, or I had to go away, or something else happened, when, you know, like I said, you have to be responsible. These are real patients and real data.
100%. And I like the fact that you pointed out the importance of do this, like take this seriously and do it full time. Don't do it as like a part-time gig. At least from my time in medical school, I feel like there was plenty of people who, to beef up their CV, they'll, do research and stuff. And I think it's gotten to a point now where, maybe early in your career when you're younger, it's like, oh, you can see a couple things like, oh, they did research. But I think that at the highest level, you can't just do anything just whenever it's convenient. Like you have to be all in.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, not only that, I feel that for the clinician scientists who are going to watch this either live or afterwards, one of my early mentors told me how important it is to get well trained in research. So curiously, I just graduated a master's of science in clinical research 6 months ago. And people said, what, did you really have to go through this? Like 2 years of going back to school, being a full-time ICU doctor in the middle of COVID, and trying to also build this, research department. And I said, yes, absolutely, because you have to have the ability to be a lifelong learner, and you have to learn the methodology and learn how to play the sport before you actually play the sport, right? So so yeah, that also goes into the factor of can't do it on the side, have to do it as a full-time job and take it seriously.
Yeah. And I think that, you know, I am definitely a proponent of uh the quote unquote side hustle. So for people who are employed, if you do so, that's fine. But I think the biggest thing just is to know that you have to make some serious sacrifices to make that work, and obviously work harder. And again, like, there's an old saying in business, which is, maybe it's not an old saying, it's just my saying: ain't no money in easy things, and so if you want results, if you want to, have a lot of leverage and notoriety, like within the world of clinical research, like, the people who put in the extra hours and the effort, like, it shows. Like, it's very, very obvious, especially when you're at the when you're walking through the, at least for me, when I walk through uh the sections, the abstract sessions at conferences, I can tell which departments take their research seriously and other ones they're just publishing for the sake of publishing.
Yeah, absolutely, Omar. And again, happy to just talk more about this, but also want to be cognizant of questions that come through to you if you have
Yeah.
any. Yeah.
We got so it's a for some reason with academic clinicians, they're a little bit shy because I think it's a public comment. But let me go to my private messages and see. Sometimes people message me there. We do have one question that came in from Dr. Khateeb. His question is, what is your advice to new researchers, and what is a common mistake when building a program? And by the way, I just checked my message. I got looks like it's two or three. So let me go and see what questions are there, and I'm going to bring them over anonymously. Okay, while you answer this one.
Sure. Well, Dr. Khateeb, nice question on my advice to new researchers and mistakes when building a program. Um, like I just said, my most important advice to new researchers is to make sure that you're building yourself as well as you build the program, which means that you have to get appropriate education, knowledge, and be a part of a structured program as you learn how to do research. The other advice I'd like to give is always have a next to negligible ego as you build a career in research. Research is a is a team sport, and you have to learn how to play the team sport in the true spirit of the team sport, which means that there is a lot of times where you may think that it is me, the clinician, who knows the right answer to this. But I will tell you that my pre-medical students have been my biggest teachers. They are the ones who sometimes turn around and tell me, no, this is what happens at 2 o'clock at night when we have to go in and check in on a patient. And even though, I might say, oh, clinically that's not possible, but I am learning a lot from them. I'm learning a lot from my research nurses. I'm learning a lot from my medical students. I'm learning a lot from my research fellows who come from other countries, because research is in a sense being taught all the time to you as you build your program. The other part about not carrying an ego is to identify appropriate mentors both within and outside the institution. I think mentorship is really important at all stages of life, but it's certainly very important when you're building a new program. I have mentors here at Wake Forest who I speak to on a regular basis. I don't have to always talk to them about research. Sometimes I just talk to them about you know what next car I should buy, if should I buy a car or not, or whatever else they have to talk to me about. um, um, but have that person or people around you, your sounding board, your mentors, people who you can go to and say, am I doing this right? uh, how much time am I spending on this? Is this the right way to go? And don't those people will give you some direction. So the biggest mistakes, just to round up your question, is really to be directionless. So to have a direction, have an aim, and really follow that aim, and also to give yourself some mental milestones, right? So in the next 6 months I want to do this with this program, in a year I want to do this, in 3 years I want to do this, in 5 years I want to do this. And then very finally, have the ability to inspire the personnel in your program, because um, I always say it's easy to be a part of clinical trials. You can always sign a contract. You can say, oh, I'll be a part of this really large important trial, but it's very difficult to emerge strong and to do well, and to do well at the cost of not compromising on data and patient safety. And that really separates the top 2% of clinical trial sites with from the rest of the world, is the ability to do well, not compromise on data or patient safety. And that is what we should all strive for and inspire our teams to do. And and that's where some of the mistakes new people make, is sort of to be okay with mediocrity. But again, don't get me wrong, we don't also have to be absolutely competitive, but we have to be competitive so we can do trials well. We cannot take clinical trials lightly.
Fantastic. And yeah, Dr. Khanna, yes, I was correct that so our audience is kind of shy, I think, because these are public comments, which, hey, everybody, don't worry. Like, I don't think your boss is going to be watching, but that's okay. So I have a few questions that came into the private chat. So let me bring up the first one, which is so we got three more questions for you. One is, what's the best way to identify responsible researchers? So this is from somebody that's I won't mention their name, but at least I'll shout out where they're watching from. They're out of Wisconsin.
So I guess the question is, best way to identify responsible researchers. Now, if this person I is asking from the perspective of a sponsor, or then, and I'm
It looks
guessing,
like
okay,
from their title, it looks like they'd definitely be a sponsor.
okay, um, um, that's great. It's a very important question. Um, so there's a few things. Obviously, there's the weight of a reputation and a CV that people build over time. So obviously you'll see that. You'll see prior history of being involved with clinical research, and being successful with trials and taking them across the finish line. But also, really importantly, is to come talk to that person's team. The team speaks for the person, right? And the institution and the team together speak for the research environment. In the world of clinical trials, research environment is super important. So I always encourage, for example, our sponsors to come visit us. And now that they can do that in a world sort of post COVID, I encourage them to come and spend like a full day with us, talk to our team, talk to our team candidly, talk, you know, go out, go out for a meal with us, walk around the hospital with us, see how we do our day-to-day work, see how we do our day-to-day trials, and see how we organize our data, see how we would run hypothetical patients in this environment. And that is really important. A responsible research would have a well organized infrastructure for every single patient that comes through a trial, both at in terms of doing the actual protocol, but also in terms of the paperwork at the back end and the front end. And you need to go visit the site and talk to the team to identify that.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Next question, and let me just hover over and see. So this one is coming from somebody who's based out of the New York City area, and at a very large academic institution there. So the question is, any books or things to Google regarding your advice on using a specific system? And I believe that's with regards to yeah, you said, I think, yeah, on your vision slide, you mentioned using a system or infrastructure. So is there anything that they can kind of look up? I was going to tell this person that you do have a slide on this, so go back and review that slide, but maybe if there's anything extra you can share.
That's also a great question, I'll say. So, unfortunately, people haven't written too much around this, and I wish they would, because a lot of this, like for someone like me, um, I'll openly take name of Daniel Sessler, who was one of my early career mentors up at Cleveland Clinic, where I trained and did my early faculty life. And and for example, I always looked at the system that he had set. It was called the Outcomes Research Consortium. I'm still a part of the consortium, and I learned a lot. I learned a lot looking at him and looking how he ran his research machinery and framework, and that's how I learned. So, is there any things on Google or any books? Not really. What is available is, successful research programs. So, I don't want to specifically name some because then I'll forget others and I don't want to sound biased, but I'll say, the group at Outcomes Research is something that you all should look at very closely. The group at MPOG, which is the Michigan Perioperative Outcomes Group, is where you should look at very, very carefully. And the group at maybe UPenn or WashU and UCLA and Pittsburgh and there's and Duke next door. And again, I can go on and on. And again, if I haven't included your site, doesn't mean that you're not a group that is, well organized and has done things that should be emulated. I'm just that I can't count everyone, but again, that's a good starting point to go talk to some of the leaders at these groups and understand how they're doing things. And that would be my best message right now.
Fantastic. And then one last question. This is an interesting one. I think, one of the things that a lot of people like is having some kind of like structure or process, like a little step by step to go with. By the way, Dr. Khan, I was gonna say, if you decide you want to write about some of these things in posts, like reach out to me. I'd love to show you like how you can maybe put these into LinkedIn posts, and maybe I would love to have you publish it through our publication, The State of MedTech. But let me bring up this last question. And actually, hold on. This person is based out of locally, so they're based out of SoCal, the LA San Diego area. And the question is, how often do you reevaluate, and what do you reevaluate? Any tools and protocols on this? So in terms of like frequency of reevaluation, and then do you have like a structured process? Like how and what do you do?
Wow, these are top-notch questions, I will say, Omar. So I'm really impressed by your audience
we have
today.
a great we have the best. I always tell people, in the world of healthcare and medicine, the State of MedTech has the smartest audience, best audience, hands down. Even though today they're a little bit shyer, this is the academic guys and gals, so that's okay. But very smart audience.
Yeah, so reevaluation for me is part of, like, process redesign and workflow engineering kind of system. Um, I would say that we have constant reevaluation. So internally, we do it every 3 months or so. So every 3 months or so, I will sit down with my senior research nurse and also with my administrator, who is looking at budgets and funding and everything else, and really go through everything again, along with I forgot to mention, even with our clinical research technician program, because it has grown so much in the last few years, we now have a chief or a lead clinical research technician who he or she leads that entire group. So I sit down with the lead CRT, the lead research nurse, and the administrator in the department, and go over everything again and say, hey, where do we need to redistribute our personnel? What trials are doing well? What trials are struggling? What trials are finishing up? How do we move people around to get the best in terms of workflow, um, efficiency, and also academic output? Because in the end, for the principal investigators and for the research personnel, it's also about the academic output, right? So we need to ensure that's maintained. So that we do once in 3 months. So sort of that's a big, let's just sit down for a few hours and go over everything and look at how we move things around. And then more frequently, every week, actually, we do something called a research huddle, where we go over all of the 40 things that are going on in the department. And we talk about enrollment numbers. We talk about, 5 minutes to every person to just say, okay, this is going well, this is not going well, this is where we need help. And that's where, I jump in and I say, okay, this is what we need to do to try and fix this, right? That's more frequent. And then at the end of the year, I obviously sit down with my department chair, and then I present my mission and vision, and I say, well, this was my mission and vision. This is where I am, and these are going to be my needs for the next year. And again, that's as I joke, because it's around this time of the year, I say, well, it's a holiday time, and I hope that this is my Christmas tree, and you're going to put all of these gifts under the tree for me. It doesn't always happen, because I'm also like any other human. I need all of the little things I could gather for the research vision of the department, whereas the department chair also has to look at doing a lot of things to keep the rest of the department functioning. But that's how we sort of do a staged process of constant evaluation and reevaluation. Um, my next step on this is going to have external evaluation. So I might go to someone who's who leads a big department in another institution and say, actually, come spend a few days with us and provide us an external audit and a report on our work and tell us how we're doing. So that's coming, because I mean, we've done this for about 3 or 4 years now, and I plan to actually do that in next year or two.
Fantastic. And great questions, everyone. Let me just go a quick scan. Doesn't look like we have any more questions in the comment section. Let me refresh my page and see if we have any private messages. Looks like we covered all the questions. So Dr. Khanna, thank you so much for joining us. Stay on for just a second. We'll chat. And for everybody who's watching, whether you watch this live or on demand, again, I want to remind you, and actually, let me take this off the ticker real quick. So if you're a clinician, don't forget, you can unlock an AMA PRA Category 1 CME credit. All you got to do is click the link that's going to be in the show notes here, which I'll leave a comment with. Or if you attended this and registered via LinkedIn, you'll get an email from us. All you got to do is click that link, follow it to CMify, write down 10, 20, 30-second reflection. What did you learn? What are the key things that you recall from this lecture? And then you'll be able to unlock that credit, and it's going to be free to you via the state of MedTech. And if you're an academic researcher wondering how you can start adding CMEs to your program and some of your meetings, go ahead and shoot me a message. I'd love to introduce you to the great team over at CMFI. So with that all being said, my name is Omar Khateeb. This is another episode of the State of MedTech, and we'll see you all next time. Take care. And Dr. Khanna, thank you again for joining us.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.